This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to the DBC Pod. This is the weekend review of June 19th, 2021. Happy belated Father's Day to all you Disney dads out there. It's an interesting week this, Phil, because if you're listening to this show, you could also be watching us talk to each other. We are now launching a YouTube channel.
Wow. I'm impressed.
We need to get all those subscription dollars from the ad revenue. Maybe we could buy some bubble gum after a year of all that. No, we want to do it because we know a lot of people, at least I do, that we don't listen to podcasts, but they spend their days watching vlogs on YouTube. So we figured the more people that can listen and watch in their living rooms, hopefully we're not the two bearded men on screen right now. We're not scaring any of your children away. You don't scare my children, so we're pretty good. But so if you're listening to this, go check our YouTube channel. Phil's going to have it on social media.
Yes, we'd be pushing that out everywhere.
If you type in DBC Podcast into YouTube, there's a dirt bike channel that goes by the DBC Podcast as well. I thought that was kind of fun. But that being said, we're going to be working on the graphics. We're going to be working on the screen. You can see my lovely pale complexion with the whiteness of the monitors in front of me. So If you see me staring off like this, it's because I've got 4 monitors. I've got a battle station here from work that I'm using to produce this podcast. So that being said, lots of big news this week, Phil.
Yes.
Lots of big news. Fireworks.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the big one. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to get that in a second. We're also going to talk about masks and plexiglass. We've got Attractionality. We got the Frozen sing-along this week. Reminder to watch Loki. Episode 2 has been out for a week. We'll be doing that now also via video. It's not going to be as fancy as some of those other YouTube channels that have the Easter eggs in the video. It's just going to be our face. I don't have time to produce something like that. That being said, we have a new DBC expedition. We hope you enjoyed Disney's Americana. This week we're starting, I think it's a 3-parter, Phil. I believe.
That's the way it was leaning. We were thinking 2, and then it was running long in the tests, and yeah.
Project Gemini, you'll hear later in the show, is early 2000s attempt at revitalizing Epcot, and we're going to kind of follow that story along. Originally broke probably almost 20 years ago by Jim Hill, and he did some extra reporting on that. That being said, as usual, we've got the news with you, Phil. Welcome to the new world of video.
Very impressive. Jason hinted to this before, but yes, Disney did send out a message asking people to look to the skies as more magic will be returning next month. We actually mentioned this as a rumor last week, and it broke right after, confirming the rumor that we had. This one, lots of rumors out there are not true, but this one turned out to be true. And that fireworks are returning to the stateside Disney parks. Walt Disney World will see fireworks starting on July 1st. We will get Happily Ever After returning to Magic Kingdom. And at Epcot, they will get Epcot Forever. They did mention that one element from the show previously where they had these light-up kites that were going around being pulled by jet skis. They figured with the giant taco barges, it might be dangerous to have people on jet skis. So they are replacing it with more pyro. So at least it's not just being cut; they are replacing it. So I think
they're spending extra money. Excellent.
I know that's good. And then also they did say that Disneyland will see on July 4th. They'll start having Mickey's Mixed Magic returning at the Disneyland park. No word yet on dessert parties. I'm assuming they might just be seeing how it goes and that sort of thing. But those bring in good amount of money for Disney, so I'm assuming they'll come back. But no word on those yet.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking of other things coming back to normal. One thing that a lot of people have been waiting for a number of rides is for pre-shows to return. And those have started this week. I think one of the biggest ones people were waiting for was actually one of the ones that I guess first started it was Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Since then, though, the pre-shows have also returned to the Haunted Mansion. The Test Track Design Studio is open, so you can go back to actually designing your car. And also Twilight Zone Tower of Terror pre-show is back. So that is another step back. So now you can go and you can have some people reciting the spiels and ruining it for you all over
Time.
again.
Yeah, well, we
Every
want
time.
people rooting it because now that's part of the show almost now at this point.
Almost a little bit, I think. But while that's coming back, something is leaving, and that is the plexiglass. So we're seeing that being returned from a lot of rides. Even I saw today on Frozen Ever After. Frozen will be mentioned again later in the show, but that was one where I saw a lot of video of people going through. And once water sprayed up on the plexiglass, if you're in one of the back rows, like, you can barely see the animatronics. So it is nice to see that that is gone there. Perhaps less nice is that they are back to jamming people like sardines into the buses.
Oh boy.
So I mean, obviously that's good that it takes less, buses to transport more people, so you don't have to wait as much for the next bus. But I mean, some of those after the park closes and they just jam people in there, and everybody's a little sweaty, a little ripe, and you're kind of got somebody kind of shoved into you and stuff. It's not always the most fun thing at the end of the day, but it's another step back to normal.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like 15-ish people. I thought I saw. They're limiting standing room, right, at this point.
That's what it said. The first report I saw said that they were going to limit the same, but then I saw other reports where people were like, it felt like back to normal, where they were just jamming people in there. So I guess we'll see. Maybe 15 people did feel, after what we've had for a while, maybe 15 people did feel like jamming it in there, but it seems to be back to normal. One other thing is returning is single rider lines have returned. We've seen that at things like the Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, and Test Track, I believe, had it too. So again, another nice addition. Another should help reduce some of the wait times for people, so that they're actually fitting every seat there. And for people willing to ride single rider, I know we do that quite often on, say, Expedition Everest. You can really cut down your standby time if you're willing to do the single rider line. And the last quick update I had was that the campfire is returning at Fort Wilderness. They did say that normally in the past Chip and Dale were there. They're not going to be there, and they also have somebody who plays music and kind of leads the crowd in singing. He won't be there, or he or she won't be there. But at least the campfire itself is coming back. That's one thing that we have been waiting for, returning at the resorts. And so I thought at this point I might mention also a little shout out again to the Disney Comeback Index. We are updating it in real time, but I know Matt Pato isn't. It doesn't get added in until it's actually back. So like the fireworks haven't gotten credit yet because they actually haven't come back. But some things like the pre-shows and things like that have been entered into the spreadsheet. And at the last update, we were up to 55.71% back.
Hold on, because I meant to do this before we got into the news.
Oh, okay.
I have the spreadsheet up for everybody watching. It's current Disney index, real time, like you said, 55.71%. The attractions are really ramping up. Disney Springs and attractions, one at 90%, the latter at 85%. We're still losing on the paid events and seasonal, but I'm pretty sure that's going to get jacked up pretty quickly in July.
Yeah, and also I think the fireworks and stuff like that, those nighttime spectaculars have a lot of points, and so once we get to July 1st and that sort of thing, that area will come up quite a bit. But I was looking back just to kind of give an indication. At the end of April, we were at 51.93%, so we've gained about 5 points or so in the last month or so. So trending in the right direction.
Yeah, no, we definitely are. It's slowly creeping up, even compared to. I'm trying to find the tabs here. I'm live producing the show. I don't have a production nook helping me out. Yeah, we're at 55.7%. Yeah, so we've got up about 1% overall in the last, let's say, 10 days, which is pretty good.
Yeah. So the couple other news items I want to mention. One was interesting that people might have seen, whether you went to Disney or Universal during the pandemic times, they were really pushing, or in some of these mandating, that you had to use mobile order at a lot of the quick service restaurants. Mm-hmm. Well, it came out today that Universal is ending that. They are discontinuing mobile ordering as an option at almost all of the restaurants, save for two in the main theme park. Yeah, I know they did it a bit differently than how Disney did it, and I know some people had problems with it because you kind of had to wait online to get and then you had to go to a table and then say you're here, and then they would bring. It was just taking a really long time, especially during peak food times, like people over lunch especially, people were having to spend hours at times. So I don't know if they just didn't have enough people or the right system set up or whatever, but it didn't seem to work quite as well there as at Disney. Mm-hmm. So they're, I guess, rather than trying to trying to adjust it or fix it. They just were just going to end it, and now it's back to kind of the old ways of just everybody wait in line to place your order and then go find a table after you get your food.
Jam everything in there.
Exactly. Now, people might have known in the past there was news about ice cream with Ample Hills going away, and then Disney did open up just a small ice cream counter on the boardwalk, but it now has come out that Salt and Straw ice cream is going to be coming to Disney Springs in 2022. For those of you not familiar with them, they're kind of a chain. They have several locations, not millions of them or anything like that, but they do have one at Downtown Disney in California. So I know some people have been there, really like it. They have some really interesting flavors. So I think that's always just, when you're on vacation, you want to do something that you can't necessarily do at home, but they have some interesting flavors. And some of them I think are sort of unique to Florida. So they have one called the Salty Donut Guava and Cheese, and another one called the Panther Coffee Chocolate Tres Leches. So really interesting.
You're all
flavors.
into it.
Oh yeah. So I'm I'm excited about it. The news broke today. I was reading the news. It was cool.
Exciting.
Now, we don't normally talk about the international parks, but I thought it was worth mentioning that Disneyland Paris reopened this past week, and that meant for the first time in about a year and a half, all the Disney parks globally were open at the same time. So I thought that was something worth mentioning. It seems like some of the parks weren't closed for that long, and then others kind of closed earlier. But for a year and a half, I mean, that's how long COVID has impacted the Disney parks. It's the first time in well over a year that all the parks are back open.
It's a good milestone.
And also, they were redoing the Disney Hotel New York, which is one of the hotels on property at Disneyland Paris, with a makeover called the Art of Marvel. So they were trying to add a lot of kind of Marvel touches to the hotel, not like sort of ground up where it looks like Art of Animation or anything like that with Marvel. More sort of subtle, maybe more elegant things. But that opened as well, and kind of some new restaurants that are themed to Marvel and things like that. They also have something called the Skyline Bar, which it looks like that bar that they're going to be putting on the Disney Wish that's themed to Star Wars. This one's to Marvel, where they have sort of screens behind the bar, and while you're drinking there, you might see like Iron Man fly by and things like that. So
yep,
seems like an
attack or the aliens attacking.
Exactly.
Thanos is,
everybody, last call.
Yeah, get out.
Moving on to holiday stuff, though. Specifically Halloween, we have two stories around that. One is that Boo Bash is selling out. There are actually already 12 of the dates are sold out, and almost all of them, I think they added 2 in October, but other than those 2 they just added, only one other one in October still has tickets. The rest of October is sold out, as well as opening day in August and a couple days in September. So,
and these are the dates that are like $160, $170 a ticket.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the October
yeah.
ones are the most expensive. Yeah, I mean the most expensive is on Halloween, but even the rest of October is more expensive, and those are going out. And it's not just the weekend; it's like the Tuesdays and stuff like that. So, I know some people were like, "Oh, down on it." They wanted the regular party, and this was more expensive for less of a thing. But obviously, it's going to have reduced capacity, so there's not as many tickets to sell. But people are definitely interested in
They're ready to go.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just that people were like, I don't care what it is, it's a Halloween something that Disney's doing, I'm going to buy it, or if people are excited about it being, an after-hours event with smaller crowds, or I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how well it does, what the feedback is, and what they do next year. If they bring back the regular party, if they stick with Boo Bash, if they maybe do a combination.
Who knows?
We'll see.
Yep.
And then at the park down the street, Halloween Horror Nights tickets went on sale. This is it's I guess technically the 31st year because they did something a little bit last year. They're calling this the 30th anniversary. Last year was supposed to be the 30th anniversary. Just so you know, it obviously varies by night, but they start at $71 for a ticket to Halloween Horror Nights, but they also have a lot of event extras. So you can get, and what they call it express pass, so that you get to be in the shorter line to get into the houses. They also do different tours where if you book it, you get to just literally go like right in. They're all booked for you, and your tour guide takes you in and also will tell you a bit about the houses and things like that. Those are like $200 on top of your ticket. And
are you doing that?
So I did have notes in here. I know in the past I mentioned that we might add Halloween Horror Nights. We think it's just going to be too many logistic hoops, and just the cost was adding up. We'd also have to have a babysitter and stuff. We just got a note too, our flight got moved. It's now leaving an hour earlier, so we're leaving at 7 a.m. to fly down.
Oh, wonderful.
That night. Yeah, so it just was like, I don't know, this seems might be pushing it a little bit more. So I'm trying to decide if, between my heart and my head, if it's something I really want to do, but my head is definitely telling me this is not the smartest thing you've ever done. The other thing that came out is that Jack the Clown is back. He's one of the original icons of Halloween Horror Nights. He is back for the 30th anniversary. I don't think that's a surprise. One thing that came out and I thought sounded pretty cool is that they're going to have presents for Halloween Horror Nights at some of the resorts, not just in the parks, specifically at Cabana Bay. They're calling it a jacked up experience at Universal's Cabana Bay. And so they said they're going to have sort of like, memorabilia or things like that from past events around for guests to look at. And they're also going to change the lobby bar, which is the Swizzle Lounge lobby bar, is going to be turned into the Horror Icons bar. And it's going to have snacks and beverages inspired by past events. So I thought that was kind of neat how they're kind of building that out. And that was actually one thing I'm thinking of is while we're down there, if we don't do the full Horror Nights, maybe we can hop over to Cabana Bay. We're staying at Portofino Bay, so maybe we can go over there and at least check out this kind of
take a look,
jacked up experience and get a little bit of, just a taste of Halloween Horror Nights, I guess.
A little bit.
And that is it for the news. A reminder of our social media accounts: Twitter at PodDBC, Facebook DBC Pod, and of course our YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel.
So, yes.
We need, I think, 100 subscribers or something,
Yes.
and then we can change our URL so it'll be at whatever. But now
it's just a whole bunch of numbers and stuff. So
yes.
We will link that out. And of course our Discord server. And I don't know if I mentioned Twitter, but Twitter at PodDBC.
Now, if you're listening, you now immediately have to go on your nearest web browser, YouTube app, and find our channel and subscribe. You don't have to hit the little bell, but you have to subscribe. I think I need to edit in like that little thing that comes across the screen and it says subscribe and like and all this other stuff. Yep. No, I'm not going to do that right now. In any case,
my kids watch some of the YouTubes. What are you supposed to say? Like smash that like button or whatever.
Smash that like button. Yeah, my kids do the same thing. They're doing their own little vlogs of whatever they're doing. My son's into Rubik's cubes now. He can solve one under 2 minutes.
Very cool.
So I don't know how many videos he's watched, but he practices quite a bit.
Cool.
That being said, the news. Thank you very much, Phil. On to Attractionality. This week, we've got a preview because we're changing it up in the following weeks. That's going to be a little fun, but we're going to kind of tell you about that after this. But this week is the Frozen Sing-Along at Disney's Hollywood Studios. One of my favorites. I actually enjoyed this one. And to kind of give you an idea, this is what it looks like on Discord, folks. So come on in and kind of vote. You can see the people chatting about it and putting up their own opinions, but we're going to talk about them now. So right off the bat, Phil, everybody just saw how I voted because my votes were highlighted. That being said, how much do you like the concept of this attraction?
So I give this one a 4. I like the idea of it. I think the idea of taking things from the movie that people are familiar with, you have the songs and the kids sing along to it, and I like how they add to it with the performers. That add a lot of comedy to the show. I think they make it, sometimes the jokes are a little bit more maybe aimed at the adults and stuff too. So it really makes it more of a whole family type experience. Mm-hmm. I had trouble giving this, and it'll carry forward in some of the other ones, a 5, just because so much of it is literally clips from the movie. So it's
true.
Like, how can you, when you're giving 5s to like these amazing attractions with animatronics and stuff, and this is based on, clips, it falls a little bit short for me, but I give it a 4 overall.
Yeah, I mean, the Disney explains it or describes it as: drift over your seat to the theater, listen to Spellbound as the royal historians of Arendelle recount the frosty story of their enchanted kingdom. The snow must go on. We've seen this a handful of times. The kids really like it. I like how it snows at the end. All my kids below the age of 5 were mystified by that and amazed. I like you said, I like the adult humor in it. You get little glimpses of that. I think they do a good job of entertaining you. Like when you say there's clips, it's not just you just watch it a movie screen, right? There's actors and they're doing some stuff. So I think it's a fantastic show. I give it a 5. I just love the concept of sitting down, air conditioning, and being entertained by a movie, but with live actors on it. I love the concept. It's good. If they did this for Beauty and the Beast over in Paris versus what they did currently, I guess, with a different point of view, that might be going over a little bit well. So question number 2 is, how well do you think the Frozen show delivers for its audience? So I think I flipped on your opinion on this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I give this a 4, although part of me just knowing how much my kids enjoy it, I was leaning towards a 5. I gave it a 4 again because just clips of watching the movie that obviously they can watch from home, and it's not the same as if it was just actual characters and they got to see Anna and Elsa for the whole show and stuff like that. So I don't know. I probably could have been talked into a 5, but I went with a 4.
I went with a 4 too, only because the kids might be expecting the movie and only getting some of the songs type of thing.
Okay, yeah.
So it totally delivers, but I don't think there's enough egging on getting all the kids in the audience to sing. It's just like now there's the sing along on the movie, and I think my daughter was kind of embarrassed to sing along with everybody else. Not that many other people were singing, right?
Oh, so, interesting.
I don't know if you could have got like maybe the actors to kind of start pumping people up that they have to sing along type of thing. I think that might have made it a 5. Got to give you an idea. This rated out of everybody that voted 4.68. So we both gave it under the average, whereas the first one, the average score is 4.36. There's a couple of people that gave it a 2 and a 3, which I thought was interesting. Next question is, how much do you personally enjoy a Frozen sing along? I give it a 5.
Okay. I also gave it a 4. I think my kids, though, probably might give it a 5 or something. And it's interesting how you said that you didn't see too many kids singing it. I feel like when we've done it, and it has been, maybe a couple of years or whatever, but it felt like everybody was singing along. I mean, that to me was like one of the favorite parts, whether it was my kids or even just seeing other kids like belting this out, like living their best life. I thought that was great. So maybe it's one of those things where it varies by show, where maybe once some people start doing it, everybody kind of jumps in and goes along with it. Whereas if you don't have those leaders, maybe it doesn't happen. But we've always really enjoyed it. So overall, I gave it a 4 just for me personally. There's other things I'd rather do in the park, but I think it's like as far as the shows go, I think it was well done. I think it's a lot of people, I think the comments were, and I agreed with them that it was so much better than I was expecting it to be. So I think that should carry weight.
Yeah, I gave this a 5 only because it's indoors, it's air conditioned, and all my kids are sitting still, right? I've got 3 young ones. When I went back in 2019, I had a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And that indoor seating, the queue's not terrible, right? It's in the shade, and you get crammed in there, but still, I love it because it's a good show. Like if that disregard all the children and the air conditioning aspect of it, I would probably rate it probably a 4. But throw in like I don't have to watch these kids closely; they're sitting right next to me. I dig it. This one also kind of rated a. Where was it? It was 3.88. So more people were tending towards the medium.
Yeah, there are a number of like 4 people gave it a 2 and somebody gave it a 1. So obviously not everyone's favorites, but I definitely get what you're saying with it's kind of like a good recharge attraction, get everybody out of the sun and sitting down for a bit and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Last question: How well do you think it fits in Echo Lake in Disney Hollywood Studios? I'm going to go first on this one because I gave this a 1.
Okay.
Because it doesn't fit. It has nothing to do with Echo Lake, and we're just going on theming. It'd be great if Hollywood Studios had like a Frozen Land or a Princess Land or I don't know, whatever, and that would fit perfectly. But it's just a show building that's kind of a big, people eater that happens to have this attraction in it. That's why I don't like Echo Lake totally as a whole. I think it needs to be rethemed into something. We talked about this, was it?
Yeah, we've talked about. I think in the past, when we were talking about Star Tours, I think.
Yeah, and Indiana Jones.
I gave it a 3. I mean, I probably could have almost been talked into anything. I think it fits about as well as anything else, right?
That's true.
On a show in Hollywood Studios, right? So
in that context, yeah.
Yeah, so I gave it a 3, kind of just like I guess it's okay. It like it is what it is. But I honestly I can understand where you're coming from, giving it a 1.
So with that being said, the final score for Fit was 2.72. So most people were right in between what you and I thought. A follow-up question is this attraction worth doing a second time? So let's say you go every other year or every year. Is this on your list to do every single time you go?
I think it is for us. I mean, I don't know if we were, locals and going or people that went, 3-4 times a year, if it would have to be done every year. But I think with only going once every year or so, it's that enjoyable. And it's like you said, it's a good break from the sun and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty much a must do for us.
Yeah, to me, yes, it's always definitely worth doing a second time. The actors kind of put their own emphasis on it, so you might not catch one of the jokes here and there. And of course, the whole air conditioning thing. Obviously, you're going to be doing that if you're going during the summer or in the early fall. It's definitely worth doing. If they had to rip this out, okay, it's now 10 years in the future. They're probably still not doing Frozen because Frozen at this point is almost 20 years old already. What other movie would you like to see in there with current movies? Obviously, not some fake future movie that you're making up in your head.
I'd like to design this movie. Yeah, that's an interesting thought because a lot of the recent ones haven't had necessarily maybe the songs that, I mean, obviously you could do, Frozen 2 with some of the songs of that. I'm sure that could be an easy update. I think Tangled could be done well.
That's true. Yep.
I think those, just a lot of people really like the songs in that. I think it has like that good level of humor that I think could fit well too. And you kind of have even, the kingdom, have the people from there. It could fit in pretty easily as well without being a huge change. And I think that could go over well.
Yeah, I think Tangled is good, but does it have to be a princess movie, you think?
I don't know if it has to be I feel like it needs songs though, right? So
that's true. It is a sing-along.
Right? So I mean, if we want to say, well, we'll just put on a play or something like that, I could pick something else. But in my head, I was saying replacing it with something else as a sing-along. And it feels like I can't think of too many non-princess ones. I mean, unless you're going way back to like Pinocchio or something.
I get,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. There's, unless you want to just actually write all songs for like Iron Man 1, right? And that's not going to work.
I mean, well, they did. I mean, they did that for the Nemo show, right? There was no songs in Nemo, and they wrote songs for the play, for the production.
They put on big production on that.
Kingdom. So yeah, they could add songs to something else. That could be cool.
And so, next week for Attractionality, we're not going to do this list of questions. Castistone is putting together a bracket. We've decided we've ranked all, what did he have, 16 Pixar movies, something like
23. It started with 23.
So everybody had to rank their top 12, right? And then the top 12 went into or the highest 12 got put into a bracket, kind of like March Madness. And we're voting. We just finished voting, I believe, on the first tier.
Yes, for those. So the top 4 picks got a bye, and then the next 8 had kind of that first round. So we just finished voting for that round, and we're into the next round.
So I believe we're gonna have an update on where we are with that. I don't know exactly where we're gonna finish out as, but we'll definitely talk about the ones that were picked from the community and talk about some of the tiering and where people are trending on their votes. So if you're part of Discord, hop on over and get your votes in on the Attractionality channel. And if you're not on our Discord server, what have you been doing all this time?
Really? Come on.
Hop on and participate. It's really fun. There's some really anguishing choices that you have to pick. Is that the right word, anguishing? I mean, people are anguishing over the choices they have made.
Yeah, they're lamenting. They're struggling.
They're like, I think what was the 2 Toy Stories were up against each other in this round of voting?
They are in the latest round. It's got 2 of the Toy Story movies are up against each other.
It's interesting. It's going to lead to a lot lot of interesting discussion. Maybe we'll have Adam on to kind of go through all of it because this is his child. He's doing a really good job running it. So with that being said, talking about Pixar, today's topic of the week is, and we're hitting our numbers perfectly, by the way. We had 15 minutes to the end of the news, 15 minutes to the end of Attractionality. Phil, we're awesome at this. This is why we're on YouTube. We're ready for the big time.
I know, we're ready for the big time, right? No more messing around.
No. Our topic for the week is the review of Luca that just came on Disney Plus last week. What are your initial impressions, Phil? Well, maybe you should give a summary of what the movie is and then what your first impressions were.
Sure. So Luca is set in a small town in Italy, and it takes place, 100 years ago or something like that, or no, I guess maybe 30, 40 years ago. There's not super modern technology, but they do have, Vespas and things like that. And it's basically about a family of, I don't know what else to call them. The town refers to them as sea monsters. So creatures who live in the ocean, but they have the ability when they come out of the water, they turn into human form. But they are viewed, they say that the human world is dangerous because they kill the sea monsters, and the human people are scared of the sea monsters because they think the sea monsters are going to kill them. So obviously it's a literal fish out of water story, I guess, because the son in there, I mean, I'm not going to spoil everything, but he winds up going out into the human world and getting to experiencing it. And he kind of has just sort of a boring life down in the sea, as his chores and things like that. He's not really doing anything exciting. So he sees this life as something more exciting. He befriends another one of these sea monster creatures who sort of is more willing to try things and kind of more dangerous, more of a bad boy, or however you want to call it. And he pushes Luca out of his comfort zone, and they meet up with a friend, and they start competing, and it's a really
they go on an adventure.
Yeah, basically. But it doesn't go. It really just revolves around this town. So it's interesting that a lot of the shots are really grandiose how it goes through the town, but it's kind of a small scale movie. They're not, going into outer space or anything major like that. So it's really about friendship and what they do in this sort of adventure they have in the town.
And it's lovely. The animations are great. The colors are extremely vibrant. They have really cool accents, and it's really well done. There was a whole, I guess when it was announced it was coming to Disney Plus, there was a whole kind of stink from people at Pixar. I think some might have been on Twitter a little bit. I don't recall.
Yeah, there was at least one tweet from, I think, somebody who worked there or used to work there, was sort of a little bummed, because it seems like all the movies that are going to Disney Plus without the premiere access, so just for free for subscribers, have been Pixar movies. So you had Onward kind of got pushed on quicker, and then Soul was given away free for Christmas time, and then now this summer they gave Luca for free, whereas things like Cruella was getting, the premium charge where you had to pay extra if you wanted to see it. So they were they felt a little bit like, okay, like we're spending all this time in every single one of our movies. You don't think it's worth theater. You don't think it's worth being charged extra. What's going on with that? So.
Now, my thoughts are, I think Disney was validated by putting this directly on Disney Plus. I don't think this would have done well in the movies. To me, I don't think it would have done bad, but it's not going to have a big blockbuster type of hit, type of thing. So because to me it seemed like an extremely long short, right? It didn't have. I mean, the characters were great, but it didn't. It was a very simple story, and without kind of going into it, you had the introduction to the characters, the adventure that they needed to go on, and a resolution. And you could have knocked out a whole bunch of stuff. This could have been like a 15-minute cartoon. I mean, granted, it wouldn't be as good, but you could probably squeeze it in something similar. And just it kind of felt that way to me. And it's certainly not like Onward, I think, deserved probably to be in the theaters, and I think they were planning on doing that too. But
Onward actually did get released in theaters. That was the last movie we had seen in theaters before the shutdown, but it was only out for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay,
that's it. Happened, so it didn't get its full run.
But yeah, I mean, I loved it. My kids loved it. I think my son was getting a little bit bored towards the end. We watched it in 2 segments because we ran into bedtime. But it was good enough where my daughter went ahead and finished watching it on her own, like in her room, like without telling us. So we got like, all right, family movie night. We're finishing up Luca. Oh, I've seen it already. So now she's like on her tablet somewhere, watching whatever nonsense on kids' YouTube. But they enjoyed it for sure. My wife enjoyed it. Very good, funny moments. What was your take?
So I guess we're not going to have too much of a disagreement, because mine was kind of similar to yours in that, I think any Pixar deserves to be in the theater. And like you said, with how vibrant and how great the animation was, it would have been awesome to see it on a big giant screen. But I also sort of feel that of all the storyline type ones, it probably did feel a little smaller, a little bit more, I guess back in the day would have been, made for VHS or something like that. And I know, like, at the beginning I was like, really? Like, this one doesn't get to go on, but like Cruella, which I don't really care about, gets to go in the theaters. But then you saw Cruella and you thought it was amazing.
Good.
So sometimes maybe we need to give Disney more credit than we give them sometimes. Maybe
they
know what they're
doing. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like, I could go on about Cruella, how it kind of beat my expectations, because my expectations were not high, but they weren't low. Well, this is not a Cruella review, but it was worth. It was well acted. Luca, again, very well animated. There's no music.
I do want to say, actually, for Luca, there's no songs, but there's a lot of background music, and I thought the background music was one of the best.
The atmosphere was great.
Yeah, the atmosphere music, I thought that was great. But yeah, there's no songs or anything.
There's no soundtrack, right?
It's not a musical.
Yeah. So I think it deserved. It didn't deserve what it got.
Yeah.
it got access. It got Disney Plus put a premiere show right on their front cover. It displaced Cruella on the front ticker when it comes out. So I mean, it's like it'll slide over and then Cruella comes up for premiere access. But it got its position. And I think what'll happen is they're going to get extremely positive reviews on it because it's right on Disney Plus. It didn't cost $30 to go and watch, and I guarantee you that I'm willing to bet that there's probably a Luca 2 out there because they have all those assets, and if it got good stuff. I mean, it's if it's assuming it's not doesn't cost millions of dollars to make. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we might see more of that. So of course we're going to go to our DVC recommends for the week. Is obviously Luca. Both of our families really enjoyed it. Go spend. What was? Do you recall the runtime off the top of your head? Was it like an hour and a half?
I want to say it was like hour 40 something. It definitely was under 2 hours, but it was it was like an hour and 40 hours.
It wasn't short, but it wasn't long.
Yeah.
So it's a good movie. You have little kids that you have like a less than 2 hours before bedtime on like a Friday night or something like that. It's definitely worth going.
And there is a post credit scene. So if you have watched it, go watch through the credits or fast forward to the end. I mean, it's not like major plots revealed or anything like that, but it's just kind of a fun little extra scene at the end. So
I'll have to check it out. That being said, the next segment we're going on is our DBC expeditions. Bear with us because typically we pre-record these, and we already did, but now we're doing this on video. So typically we would take a break here and go on, but we're just going to go right into it on our expedition. So Phil, you had some interest. I mean, obviously it's your favorite park, so you know all about everything that's going on. And you said, let's do Project Gemini. And a lot of this stuff is super familiar, but why don't you set the stage here for Project Gemini?
Yeah, so Project Gemini, as Jason mentioned, was something done in the early 2000s or something that was debated or worked on for revamping Epcot. And obviously, I think if you're watching or listening this show, you're probably aware of what Epcot is. But Epcot was the second park built in Walt Disney World, but it was really almost the reason that Walt Disney World got built at all. It was the main part of the Florida project, and it was Walt's vision to build an experimental prototype community of tomorrow, or Epcot, where he would have companies come in and their workers would live there, and they would work on developing the latest technology, and he would all these new forms of transportation to move people around efficiently, whether it was monorails or people movers and stuff like that. And it was really, he's like, well, what I did for the theme park, for the amusement park industry, I want to take some of that and my vision is to improve the urban life and to improve what cities are in this country.
Epcot, Disney was huge. Walt was huge on city planning. He spent years studying up on city planning.
Yeah, and this was going to be, I mean, that's what he really thought his life's mission was, or this was going to be his lasting gift to the world, really. Now, obviously, he passed away before it could happen. And so the rest, Roy came out of retirement to finish up at least the first part of Walt Disney World, because even Walt knew he needed to build the theme park to get the funding and approval for the Florida project. So the first part was going to be the Magic Kingdom, sort of, Disneyland East. But they were making it bigger than just a theme park. It was going to have the hotels and all the resort life and stuff like that. So they finished that up. And then not too long after that, Roy passed away, and a lot of the executives and the Imagineers were kind of at a loss of what do we do next? We don't really have this visionary to lead us anymore. But they did know his last, vision was for Epcot. And so they thought, well, we got to do something. At least, we know this is what the Florida project was supposed to be. We don't think we could do a city without Walt. Walt was going to be the one that would make it, realistic to build an actual city. And ultimately what they did was they built another theme park. And what it was based off of, and where a lot of ideas for this came from World's Fairs. Now, there are two elements to World's Fairs. Usually a lot of them have pavilions around technology and what's going to be coming to your home in the future, or it's different countries coming in and talking about, why you should come visit them and stuff like that. So that's why there's two parts to Epcot, and there's that famous story where some Imagineers were designing the park to be like the World Showcase part, and some parts Imagineers were working on kind of the Future World part, and they didn't know which one to pick, and somebody just pushed them together, and that became
do this.
Epcot we know. Yeah. And obviously, I think it's lasted this long. So many people, Epcot is one of their favorite parks, if not their favorite park. So, it was, I guess one could say, a stroke of genius that it happened. But I think there were problems to begin with, even when Epcot, after it first opened. What is Epcot? People know what a Magic Kingdom park is. They don't know what an Epcot is. Mm-hmm. I know this statement that I found from D23 sort of sums it up when they say Epcot is dedicated to the celebration of human achievement, namely technological innovation and international culture. And it is often referred to as a permanent World's Fair. And I think that the challenge with that is the word permanent, because if you know about World's Fairs in the past, they weren't permanent. They came to an area for a couple years. Everyone thought they were cool. and then they would go away, and like maybe a decade later there'd be one in another city or something like that. So all these pavilions were supposed to sort of capture that moment in time, not be there forever. But
it gets expensive.
But Epcot was there forever. And so while it was certainly, if anybody watches any of the videos of opening of Epcot, I mean, it is hardcore 80s. So, I mean, it was amazing at the time, but it got stuck in that time. And all of a sudden you have, especially the front part of the park, which was Future World, looks like something from the past, from 2 decades ago, whatever. So even as early as the mid 90s, it was starting to feel a bit outdated, which is not what you want from your City of the Future representation park.
No. Let me throw out some stats here before you get back.
Yeah, no, I know you were doing your research, and then you found a bunch of these stats that you thought.
So I mean, this is all kind of I mean, this is all basically park attendance, right? So the park opens October 1st, 1982. Eisner was not releasing park attendance. They would just say, there's an increase, right? So we knew that in 82 there was 12.6 million people in the parks. Then in the first full year with Epcot, you're seeing an increase up to 22.7 million people. So an extra 10 million people came to the parks. Just kind of set the stage here. And then all throughout the 80s, it kind of went up. It peaked in 89 with 30 million people going to the parks. So that's a combination of that and including Disney Hollywood Studios. So we don't know what was in the minds of everybody, what good attendance was supposed to be for these parks. But then in 93, we started getting individual park numbers. And Epcot had 10 million guests in 93. So the park has been open for a decade. It grew very little in attendance. It was not a draw whatsoever. It was maintaining a good amount of crowd. Don't get me wrong. It's one of the top parks in North America. But it wasn't growing. And then in 97, it peaked with 11.8 million guests, and you would never see a number that high again. It wouldn't top 11 million to 2009, and it didn't get into the high 11 millions until 2018 when it broke 12 million. So inside all that framing, you had a lull in the 90s, and there's a bunch of stuff that they boosted for that.
Yeah, and just to kind of put that in context, is like, okay, well, what is 11 million people? What is 12 million people? The Magic Kingdom was routinely exceeding around 20 million people, and Epcot is larger than the Magic Kingdom. It can handle a lot more people. Yep. Even to this day, I think when they were saying, well, what's park capacity? What's 25%, during COVID? It's like, well, if you look at stats, on an average day, Epcot was only around 31%. And that's not because there's nobody there. It's that it can handle so many people, which you see that during some of the things that they tried to do in the 90s to boost attendance. The first thing they did was they started the Flower and Garden Festival in 1994. That added about 1 million people. Then they saw that work
people
well.
excited.
So, then they tried Food and Wine in 95, and that added about 500,000 people or so. They also tried updating some of the attractions. Now, some of this was because they wanted to add, new attractions or update them, something new to draw people in. But also a lot of these attractions needed to be updated. They weren't being maintained. The Epcot was built off of the sponsorship model, which really didn't last, or it wasn't sustainable. Especially
it was like a 10-year contract, correct?
Right. A lot of them were around 10 million contracts, 10-year contracts. Some of them re-upped. Some of them they were able to switch over from one to the other. A new company would come in, but they were really struggling in the mid to late 90s because as you're getting into that time frame, the American culture is shifting too, where they don't necessarily see corporations and giant corporations the same way they saw before. I think one of the great examples is, do I really want ExxonMobil telling me about sustainable energy? I see them as, the people that have oil leaks and stuff like that. Like that's not who I want, teaching me things. So that model didn't really sustain. So they had to do something. So we saw things like an update to the universe of energy with Ellen's Energy Adventure. Then in the late 90s, we saw Test Track come in, replacing the World of Motion. Mission Space replaced Popular Horizons. But again, that ride was starting to break down. And as much as I love that ride and wish I could ride it today, it wasn't, hugely popular in the last years, So they thought bringing in these kind of new high-tech rides, maybe more attractive to like teenagers and stuff like that, because there was always that stigma that Epcot's not for kids. But even with all that, attendance was still dipping in 1997. It jumped up a little bit in 2000. And then obviously after 9/11, all the parks were hit from from a attendance standpoint.
I think it showed that when they built the new attractions, that's what caused the peak after the festival kind of evened out every single year type of thing. Because I believe the festivals were originally only supposed to be there for a year or two, and they were
they weren't necessarily
these are great.
designed to be forever. Yeah, they were like, let's try this and see what happens. And obviously they've lasted much longer, and they've added more, and they've almost become. I think there's probably
Permanent.
fewer days now that don't have a festival than do have a festival at Epcot now.
So kind of, leading through the 90s, you saw a peak with the festivals and the new attractions, and then even that could not sustain, and then of course, like you mentioned, 9/11 kind of took the numbers out of the sales, so to speak.
Yeah. And then there were some other additional ideas they were thinking of that, got further along in the planning. Even, from earlier on, there were always thoughts to add more countries to World Showcase, and more attractions to some of the countries that are there. I know specifically ones that got further along where they were going to bring Switzerland in, and it would have had a Matterhorn. So they would have brought the Matterhorn ride over from Disneyland. There's also talk about adding a Mount Fuji themed coaster to Japan. So again, you can see the trend of we need things that are more exciting, and more maybe relevant or intriguing to younger people.
Just to put a caveat on that, those were part of some of the original plans to the World Showcase, and they didn't come about. But they were always thinking about adding thrill rides to this park. So people say, "Oh, thrill rides don't belong in Epcot." They were trying to get them in from the beginning because they knew that they had to have some of them there.
Yeah, they're certainly not, Brent. The Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout is not the first thrill ride that was thought to be added to Epcot. But they didn't go ahead with that, and at some point they decided they just needed to do something more grandiose. The park needed to be rethemed, and just a big overhaul, especially to Future World, which, as I mentioned before, wasn't looking so future at this point.
Nope.
So there was a plan to fundamentally change the front entrance of the park, and this was the key element of what this expedition is about, Project Gemini. And the idea was to change it from an old and outdated view of the future based on those corporate sponsorships that weren't looked on as favorably anymore. And also the sponsors weren't getting much out of it anymore. And so what they were really going to do and fundamentally change the front of the park, it would no longer be Future World. It would be called Discoveryland. And the idea is that this way, Disney didn't have to keep up with the latest technology. It didn't always have to look to the future, but it would still stay connected with what I think is a lot of the original vision, which is promoting discovery, whether it's about the world or discovery of new technology or discovering about nature and that sort of thing, where it wasn't just, IPs and fun rides and stuff like that. It was to promote discovery. And I know you found some of these images, Jason, where, this wasn't just something that was like blue skied and like, oh yeah, well, maybe we'll call it Discoveryland. Like they already had merchandise done. Like there's a mug that you can see where it says Epcot and it says Disney's Discoveryland. Like these things were moving along. These plans were quite, built out. And this was something very seriously under consideration.
And the mugs from 2005. So Project Gemini, as we're going to find out, was right around this time. So they were stealing elements of it. So you can kind of see that as artifacts. But keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the plan was to tear out a lot of that concrete and all the 80s and 90s neon lights that made that quote unquote future area look dated. And they wanted to add a lot more green, a lot more nature, a lot more realism to the park, which would also make it much more timeless. So they wanted to take away, what could be sterile at some point. A lot of areas were beige or gray, and they wanted to plant hundreds of trees. And I know you found this clip, as you mentioned before, Jim Hill Media, where he had put out some that he feels the potential origins of this were somewhat based on the canceled Westcott Center, which for people that are familiar with that was the original plan for the second park out at Disneyland, which would have been built, similar to Epcot, but with obviously new ideas. And you can see it looked quite a bit different than how Epcot looks, and looks a bit more timeless from that. And so I think instead of that sort of center island that was part of Westcott, it would have just rebuilt the entrance part to Epcot that we know, but instead of all the concrete and hard angles, there would have been no straight lines, lots of gardens and trees, natural world influence. And so I think the idea was for that area to really, instead of looking like concrete, it would have looked like an oasis. And had rock work and waterfalls, and it just would have felt much more inviting and much more timeless and much less like you were at a shopping center in the 1980s.
No, for sure. And I think you just saw the picture of Westcott. It's like this huge celebration. It looks really cool. So in comes Project Gemini. And I think we're going to put a stop here. And next week, we're going to take a tour of Project Gemini.
Yes.
But Phil, the Project Gemini was from early 2000s. It probably started like 98, 99, kind of somebody's back burner. And then it was actually brought to management, I guess, their attention as something to do. And next week we're going to start off with a tour of the kind of the artwork for what Project Gemini is going to be, and a lot of it looks familiar. Yes. As we found from D23 in 2019.
Yes, and I think that'll be the last segment we do is let's look at what they are doing now. That was announced at that D23 meeting. How are they reshaping Epcot to be more Disney and more timeless and more family? And you'll see that it was greatly influenced by a lot of these plans from Project Gemini. But we will take a tour of Discoveryland in our next installment.
So that being said, guys, thank you for watching and listening. And we'll see you next week. And stay tuned in a couple days for Loki. Can't wait for that. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
Take care, all.